Welcome back to Marketing Insights by Third Eye. I'm joined today in a somewhat short podcast with our producer, Allister Maisel, who's also our head of IT and once upon a time ran our AdWords department. I wanted to talk to you today, Allister, about Google AdWords and PPC. And I kind of wanted to pose the question, are Google AdWords irrelevant? We have and we've seen a lot of clients who feel like Google AdWords is something that they have to do. It's tough as a marketer when budgets are stringent to divvy up a portion of it when I don't see that ROI or that conversion, especially when you have a competitor in the industry that is just so much bigger. And what I see a lot with clients is they are like a local supplier. So a perfect example is like a med spa. You know, you could be a big med spa in Missouri, but there's a national chain that has a location close by in Missouri that has national resources to market a business. And that smaller independently owned competitor feels like they have to do AdWords, but they can't outspend. They can't outpace their competitors. So for me, where I'm sitting is I almost want to say more often than not, Google AdWords are becoming irrelevant for smaller businesses in the sense that if they put their money elsewhere, it could do better. And it's something that you and I have talked a lot about.
A lot.
Like a lot. And this is not a one size fits all conversation. It's kind of tough to have this, but I think it's relevant at least to have the conversation. So what are your thoughts, Allister?
My first thought on that is that you're 100% right. There's no one answer fits all. There's going to be a lot of clients where Google AdWords is just, it's the name of the game. They're, especially for product-driven services.
Like shopping.
Where people are going to be shopping for something. And it kind of goes hand in hand with SEO. There's a lot of businesses now that, like, you think every business should do SEO. And to some degree, that's true. But the amount of money you're investing in it.
But is it paid? Yeah.
Exactly. There's a rate of diminishing returns at some point. And the one caveat I'll say about Google Ads is for a lot of industries and almost for any business, what's great about Google Ads is that there is a bidding system. So the way it works, without getting too into the nitty-gritty of it, is you may not be able to compete for total number of leads with a competitor, a national chain, but you can compete locally for bids on specific ads. And the result will be that in the area that you're trying to target, you will still generate leads. You will probably never generate the same number of leads as one of those national chains. But because of the way bidding works in Google Ads, it's a very reliable and consistent way to generate X number of leads. The difference is like breaking out in Google Ads is never going to happen unless you can outspend your competitor. You're never going to be to blow up overnight because of exposure that Google Ads provides
through Google Ads,
unless you're
dumping that's a great point.
Millions into it.
But I do think that you're kind of having a separate conversation, and maybe I need to take a step back because you're like, what I find is because I speak so much with the business owner, right? The business owner feels really lost and handcuffed going through this experience. When they're talking with an agency, they don't know the wiser to say that $40 cost per lead or that $25 cost per lead could be spent somewhere else better. And I think that's my point when I say, you know, has Google AdWords lost its relevance in the same way of where it was a few years ago? Because what I'm seeing is the consumer knows that the first 4 or 5 options are ads. And if it means, like, what means more to you is kind of the question I want to pose. Is like, is it that you're not one of those top 4 options, and who are those top 4 options and what size of the budget do they probably have? And then 2, like, does something like going viral on social media or having an incredible radio or billboard campaign matter more, like when it comes to cost per lead? And I don't know if I'm being quite clear in how I'm explaining it, but I've got 2 examples maybe that to go through.
Sure.
We have one client that's in flooring, and we're spending at $80 per lead through Google AdWords. And they felt like they needed to be there because their big competitors, who some were their size, some were not, are putting so much resources into Google AdWords. So therefore they felt that they were losing business by not being there. but they had the worst year in marketing. Now there were some other factors, I will say, but like their agency recommended to go only digital. And this was a company that had traditionally done TV, traditionally done radio, and traditionally done like direct to mailer, so more traditional marketing. When they're a lead business, like their salespeople work on commission. So like when the leads dry up, like they literally cannot feed their families. So like there's a lot of stress and pressure for leads in their business. When they would pivot to injecting capital into traditional marketing, instantly the conversions came. And it was this like conversation, this like constant one they were having with their agency, where like months where it was good, it was attributable to them. Months that it was bad is because of your recession or like other things they were seeing in trend data. And I guess what I'm trying to get to is like, how do you decide if Google AdWords makes sense? How are you armed with the right kind of decision making? And I know it's not going to be perfect, but knowing kind of where I went with that, Allister, like how do you kind of approach clients in Google AdWords and SEO?
The first question that I would ask is, do they have an established spend on Google Ads? Are they an agency that has been doing Google Ads for a long time and relies on the leads that are coming in from Google Ads? Because it's a lot more difficult for an agency like that to say, Google Ads is not where it is. Let's divert all of this capital to these other endeavors that you won't be able to guarantee the same kind of return. And so that's kind of what I mean by what's great about Google Ads is that for a business that operates very much on the books, that you can plan with Google Ads because you have a better understanding of what you're expecting to get out of it based on exactly how much you're putting into it. But when we're talking about like businesses that are for the very first time kind of going out into that field of like, what now I want to pay for ads. You know, I've developed an audience, I've got whatever else is going on. Now I want to look into like paid. That's where you really have to evaluate both the industry that you're talking about. So what's the average cost per click, cost per conversion for an industry like that? And if it's over a certain amount, then it makes it a lot easier to say, let's explore this option later. Let's find out how much leads are going to cost you on Facebook, how much our leads are going to cost you on another platform or through a different marketing approach like traditional or those kinds of things. Because then you have a point that you can say, let's carve 30% of our budget and put it into that because it's consistent leads.
I'm going to be controversial and say I disagree. I think that Google AdWords, as a general rule of thumb, I think makes sense for big businesses that can afford to waste money. Because when you're like a big enough company, you can't afford to lose out to that small med spa in Missouri, right? But when you're a small med spa in Missouri, you don't have the dollars to throw around like a big company does. And I don't think enough small businesses are getting this advice. It's like that classic quote, half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half it is. And when you're a bigger company, you need to be in all the places at one time and you can afford to do that. And like when you scale to that size, it's not that Google AdWords is a waste of money. It's that it can be money wasted and you don't know where that endpoint conversion comes from. But I find like social media, there's so many small and medium-sized businesses that are doing Google AdWords and allotting a line serial to it and a budget because they think they have to. Mm-hmm. And that's where they lose trust and credibility in marketing because their marketing isn't working. And if you only have, I talk about this all the time, like you should be putting 10 to 15% budget to maintain your business. So top gross line revenue and projected gross line revenue. So if you're developing a budget for next year, what do you project to make? Take 10 to 15% of that and put that into a marketing budget. That includes both labor and ad spend, as well as like execution. So like ad campaigns, recordings, anything like that. But if you're launching a brand, that's 20 to 25%. So maintenance is 10 to 15, launching is 20 to 25%. And of that 10 to 15%, if you're like a muffler shop in, Iowa, like, does it make sense of that 10% of $1 million to be divvied up into Google AdWords? Probably not. Probably not. Right. Yeah. And like, I think that that's more the conversation that people need to have more of. If you're someone listening to this and you, are more of a medium-sized business or you're like a bigger business in an industry where like you're kind of top line of the competition, like, you got to be there in Google AdWords because you don't want to lose to someone smaller than you. But when you're small, I don't know if do you agree with that?
Again, with the caveat that this doesn't apply 100%. There's going to be small emerging businesses where there's a niche that you could carve out in Google Ads and you could make bank. So that said, it should always be one of the many tools that's evaluated to see if you could go that direction. But I'll also point out that two things to think about is one, businesses that don't have a physical location also benefit potentially from Google Ads in a way because they can't benefit from
brick and mortar, visibility.
The visibility on other app series, like showing up on Google Maps, showing up in the Google My Business profile, all the other kinds of things that you can really get your, like we have clients that don't pay a dime for Google Ads. And if you look at the search results in terms of like where they position for SEO, they're doing okay. They're never in the ad section because they don't pay for ads, but they are the first one in the business
organic.
section.
I'm so glad you said that.
Because we've gone out of our way to make sure that their Google My Business profiles are optimized, that they're engaging their audience in that way. So that's one thing to think about. Is there like a way that you can make use of all of Google's platforms without having to pay for Google Ads? And the answer is 100% yes, and do those things first.
But wait, before you move on, and don't forget what we're going to say. I'm so glad you brought that up because I was going to be my defense for if you were going to argue against me, because we had just had this conversation with, like, you know who.
Right.
And so this client we have, they're specialized in a certain area of law, and they are the largest within that state. And they have this competitor in one of their markets. So like they're a firm that's like in all of the cities, and some of them are digital locations, some of them are physical locations. And they really care about SEO because in law, the search terms are always subjective, like best lawyer blah in this industry, right? And so for them, SEO matters because that relevance and pairing makes all the difference in hiring a lawyer, because the decision-making cycle is so small when hiring a lawyer, because you're hiring a lawyer when there's a problem and you don't have the luxury of being able to like pick, where to go over the course of a few months. So my insertion for this point is they really care about being number one in this specific market. And you've done so much research and analyzation of this competitor that they want to beat. And like when comparing the two of them, really the only difference is this one firm is paying on ad spend. All other things, they're equal. And your kind of solution was to either it's like, hey, pony up and pay for AdWords, or drive more traffic to your location so that you're telling Google that you're more relevant. And I don't think enough people understand that when it comes to search positioning, SEO plays a big part of it. And a lot of where SEO is going is driving traffic. So doing things like investing in a billboard or radio ads where I just got off a call with someone that's in sod and gravel, right? And they want to be number one on Google. For them to be number one on Google, the best way for them to do that is like to have billboards and radio so that everyone is Googling them. And if they get a lot of high reviews, they'll become number one. So you don't necessarily have to pay for AdWords also, which people are overwhelmed by like SEO and AdWords and think that you got to pay to play, and you don't necessarily have to pay to play.
Right. I'll bring up the other point that I was going to mention, but what you said, like we had a client in the past that was the approach that we took. It's like they could spend a bunch of money on Google Ads. But first, why don't we create, and this is the beautiful part about it, the billboard that we came up with was just Google our business, like in the name of the business. No, it was literally
just Google it.
Or just Google.
It was Google
right.
it.
It didn't even, yeah, exactly.
It was their logo and it was like Google it.
Just Google it.
It was a great billboard.
And the name of the business was unique enough that if someone starts searching that, then they've already got the SEO that they need, because the name was unique. And they're instantly going to come up if someone's Googling that. Well, no, it was a direct
query. Like we're asking you to type in the brand.
Yeah,
so like,
that's what I mean.
So and that's where the SEO matters. That's why strategy matters.
There you go. And that actually parlays right into the other point that I was going to bring up, which is again, just a defense of Google Ads in the sense that what I think a lot of businesses don't understand about Google Ads, because they look at it on a balance sheet, is that Google Ads is a platform where if you have a certain rate that you want per conversion, then you could make an ad campaign and consistently get that. But you're not doing yourself justice if you're not applying a strategy, you're not thinking out of the box. You're not being creative with it. Like Google Ads seems like such a stuffy, antiquated platform, but it really does afford the opportunity for a marketing company that specializes in it to come up with incredibly unique assets and a really unique approach to something, or to dial in on kind of search queries or those kinds of things that the industry hasn't thought of. So you hire the right agency or the right specialist in PPC and they know what they're doing, then it's still one of those platforms that it's just as the devil's advocate for
and that's why we're having this
conversation.
Like, I think it's just so specific to the company's goals and the industry that they're in. When I think of like luggage, right? Like Monos versus Away versus Calpac, like these trendy luggage companies that have popped up, their game is Google AdWords PPC. Like if you type in one of the competitors, like their brands come up and you can see their ads and like what you search for isn't actually even what you get. Like you're inundated with the competitors. And for me, when I'm looking for luggage that isn't at a Rimowa or Tumi price point, but I still want it to be stylish and cool, I actually don't really care if it's Monos or if it's Away or if it's Arlo or whatever trendy luggage of the day is, or even like the Casper versus Endy mattresses. Like there's certain categories, especially in product specific, that the Google AdWords does make sense to be like a paid strategy and to be focused. But then on the other hand, I think of when I see an ad on like Thesaurus, back when I used thesaurus.ca in university, and it'd be like Revolve or it'd be like Celine. Like I'm never buying a Celine sweater or purse because I saw this Google ad placement on the thesaurus.com. But I am consistently seeing an image of Celine positioning the brand, creating synaptic connections of what the Celine brand represents visually, that it's not that ad I'm buying off of. It's because I've seen 35 ad iterations of a Celine campaign in multiple mediums and variants that I may later convert with Celine. So the way that I see AdWords and how it plays into strategy is it's more a brand awareness play that's like building repetition and connection over time for most cases. And if you're a business that can't afford that long game marketing connection you're trying to build with future clients and relationships, it's not a place for you to invest and like spend elsewhere, because it's not really digital. It's especially with where people are moving off of Google to TikTok for search. Like there's so much going on. I think Google lost the throne. And I really think that if you're a small and medium-sized business, Google is irrelevant for you. You've heard my thoughts. The point of this podcast was not just to educate and inform for what we've seen, but I've also would really love to know what you guys have seen with Google AdWords. You know, has it worked? Has it not worked? What frustrations have you felt? Do you agree with the opinion that I'm taking? And I'm asking this in a genuine and authentic way, because I want to know what you guys are seeing. I find I've seen enough that I feel like this I feel confident in my opinion, but they're still making billions of dollars in ad spend. So what have you guys seen? What has worked for you? And do you agree with this opinion? Because we would love your feedback to continue to evolve our approach to the beast that is Google.
One of the killer part, and this is an example of one of the clients that we worked with recently, is Google Ads is still a platform that leads a visitor to something that needs them to convert.
Yeah.
So you can have the best PPC program in the world and
like,
the best agency driving traffic, and then your landing page
website
looks like it came out of 1990, and you're only converting 1 in 100 people landing on it.